Welcome to the Modern Hippie Podcast, where we'll be exploring all of my favorite boundary-pushing people and topics surrounding consciousness, psychedelics, mental performance, functional medicine, living in alignment, and so much more. I'm your host, Barrett Perlman, a former pro wakeboarder turned body worker, energy healer, and well, a modern hippie. And I'm so glad you're here. Are you struggling to integrate your plant medicine or psychedelic experiences? Do you feel alone in your journey towards healing and self-discovery? It's time to discover the Sacred Integration Tribe. Our online membership community is dedicated to bringing people together to share their experiences and support one another on their healing journey. With access to a wide range of resources, including weekly expert guidance on live integration calls with me, Barrett Perlman, guest hosts, integration materials released monthly, and heart-centered peer support, you can finally find the tribe you've been searching for. Join Sacred Integration Tribe today at www.sacredintegrationtribe.com and discover the power of community on your path towards healing and personal growth. Again, that's sacredintegrationtribe.com. Welcome back to the Modern Hippie Podcast. I am joined today by Kaur, who is a licensed clinical social worker and coach who has an absolute passion for the healing powers and benefits of ayahuasca. And she hosts her own podcast called The Multidimensional Journey. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, Barrett. Yeah, thank you for inviting me on the podcast, and excited where we're going to go today.
Yeah, you and I are basically kind of connected through Hamilton. He was on your podcast, and he's a mentor of mine, and so grateful for those connections. He seems to really be growing and expanding the conscious community.
Absolutely, yeah.
How did you find him?
Yeah, Hamilton. So I watched his documentary, which is on YouTube for anyone who's curious. It's a really awesome documentary called Metamorphosis. And he really shares his story in that YouTube documentary. I love this scene in the documentary where he woke up one day and he was he's talking about his life and how he was unhappy with it. And he was like, I give it back, I give it back, I give it back. And that basically set him on this trajectory of spirit guides came in and told him about ayahuasca. And so that's how I found out about his work. And that was probably in 2017 when I just had began, on the path of ayahuasca and everything that I never knew I thought it would bring. And I was like, dang, this is so brave to get a download, follow that, manifest it so quickly. And it's really been incredible just to watch his story and everything he's doing with Blue Morpho. And so it was really cool when it was really funny actually when someone from his team reached out to me to come on my podcast. I was like, this has got to be a joke. This is I even told my partner, I was like, someone is messing with me. This really isn't cool. Anyway, so it wasn't up until the point that we were on the Zoom call together. I was like, oh my God, pinch me. I can't believe this is happening. This is amazing. So yeah, super cool. So I'm glad we're both connected in that way.
Yes, maybe one day we'll be Blue Morpho sisters.
I was thinking about that as we were talking about before we hopped on here.
Yeah. And so when did you begin your path with ayahuasca?
Yeah. So in 2000, late 2015, that's kind of when my own personal awakening journey began. I was 27 years old, and I was going through a lot of childhood trauma healing. I was confronting things inside that were very uncomfortable, as one would imagine with confronting childhood trauma. And yeah, so I was just synchronistically getting involved in all these different things. I went through a training for a modality called EMDR, and I entered a 12-step program called Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families. And then I was mysteriously led to this like medium, this channel. So like a friend of mine at the gym, she like kept telling me like, hey, you gotta go see this person. Like, I see your posts on Facebook. I think meeting her would be really good for you. And I was like, like, no, I'm good. Like, and she like told me 3 times. So like on the 3rd time, I was like, whatever, like I'll go see her. So yeah. So totally in resistance, which, it's like, that's how I was in the beginning of my journey, and, still am sometimes. Um, so in our first session that I booked with her, she like knew things about my family, and in particular my mom, that there was like no way, she would have known. And in the session, she was like, oh, there's these, the spirit guides are saying that hallucinogens would be really good for you, like specifically ayahuasca. And I was like, okay, like, yeah, I was like, I was totally turned off by it. I thought everything she said about my family and my mom, and I was like, cool, I can hang out with all of that. But I had a lot of programming. I grew up in the age, like I grew up with the DARE program. We all remember that drugs are bad. And, yeah, yeah, totally. And, I was a drug and alcohol counselor at the time. I was specifically working, with opiate addiction, helping people with that. So I was just like, that sounds really like not up my alley. But I worked with her like in a spiritual context without any plant medicine for 6 months. I would go see her regularly, and she introduced me to angels and talking to spirit guides and hypnotherapy and Reiki. So all these like subtle forms of like entering other realms and non-ordinary states of consciousness as I'm blending all my other trauma work. And then one day, I hit a wall in both my 12-step program and in therapy, where I knew like I was stuck, and I knew there was more. I knew there was more to access inside of here, wherever that was, but I knew I just couldn't get to it. So I just had this intuition about it. So I called her up one day, and I was like, whatever that ayahuasca stuff is, like, let's do it. And it's really interesting because in my situation, I literally didn't even read about it. Like I read nothing. I didn't even know what I was going to ingest, which, it's something I don't advise to people I coach these days. But the one thing I will say about this is that, I trusted this woman with my life. Like I had such a deep relationship with her way before ever entering, the realm of plant medicine with her. And that played such a large role in how deep I went in my initial experiences, how safe I felt. So the things that needed to come through actually could come through, So yeah, that's what brought me to probably like my first 5 to 10 experiences with ayahuasca, and then it would grow from there. But yeah, it was it was a life-changing experience.
I can imagine. And one thing Hamilton shared with me about you was that the ayahuasca came to you and told you that you needed to change your name to ayahuasca. Tell me how that came about and why you did it.
Yeah. So yeah, my birth name is Sarai Darbandi. Yeah, my father's from Iran and my mom's from New York. So that's the birth identity behind all of this. And then ayahuasca Kaur was inspired by ayahuasca telling me to like change my name so I could imprint her word and her vision all over like the places where we put our names. So like anytime anyone would see my name, they'd be like, "What's that? Like, what is that? Where's
Mhm.
that from?" It's kind of interesting. It's like now I feel like everyone knows what ayahuasca is. So I don't know if that mission or that vision, I don't know how long that was supposed to last, but I think on a personal level, definitely a way to honor like um
Mm.
the relationship I have with this medicine and like how much it shifted me and changed me, and how like well and clearly, like so clearly, right? I'm sure we could have, you and I both have lots of stories about how clear these
Mhm.
experiences can be sometimes of like who I truly am, because I had no compass of that prior to taking ayahuasca. I actually didn't know who I truly was on this deep soul level until I took
Mm.
ayahuasca. And then the car part, um, you see that name often like with Sikh and Kundalini, like people in the Kundalini community, which I'm none of
Mm.
those, but it's interesting. Like my first Ikaros or like medicine songs, right, traditional medicine songs were Kundalini mantras, specifically by an artist named Snatam Kaur. So my first experiences were not in an indigenous or traditional context. It was like, the music that was being played was through a speaker, and this woman, Snatam,
Mm.
like she healed every cell of my body in ways like I can't even describe. And so it's just a
Mm.
way um to really honor her, to be like, "Oh my God, do you even know what your voice has done to me?" To hold me as a precious child of God, and all of these things. So that's kind of like where the name comes from, to really honor just like these two different teachers. Although they're, in a way, they're like more than two, if that makes sense. They're probably like millions of teachers.
Sure.
um, yeah, so that's kind of the story behind the name, and yeah, it's just really to honor just everything they've done for me. Yeah, so
Ugh, I love that story. I'm like, God, I wish I could change. Psilocybin doesn't quite have the same like beautiful ring to it as
sure,
ayahuasca.
sure, sure. Yeah, yeah.
But I'm personally getting much more in my ayahuasca journey. I had done it twice
Yeah.
originally in Los Angeles.
Wow.
And then this past year, I think I'm up to like number 12 or something. So this past year, I did it like
Beautiful.
10 more times.
Wow.
And I'm really getting a chance to discover the beauty of ayahuasca and the
Yeah.
beauty of that DMT space and the
Mm.
beauty of the intelligence. And sort of similarly, I had a very strong experience my fourth night with
Wow.
Hamilton, which was like our last ceremony retreat
Yeah.
night, um, where everything like laid out for me clear as
Wow.
day. Everything about my path, the past of my
Wow.
path and the future of my path. And the mushrooms came to
Wow.
me and said, "You have to share
Yeah,
us. Like,
yeah,
this
yeah.
is your path." And I was like, this is
Yeah,
wild. Like, I hear these stories all the time of people having these crystal
totally.
clear visions and conversations. And I had yet to have had that.
Wow,
And
wow.
I was like, you can't deny this. That was pretty fucking clear.
Totally. Yeah, so it sounds like the
And
blueprint papers were like laid out for you, and um I
yeah,
love that about ayahuasca. There's something yeah, I mean that's why I think why I fell in love with it from the beginning was like there's no way, like, here I am like a trained therapist, blah blah blah. I was like, there's like no way I could ever do what this medicine does. And that's why I was like, this is so like, and you mentioned intelligence. It's just so it's even hard to put it into words, right? Like, so I'm so
Mm.
happy that you have had that experience and that connection. And I'm really excited to hear everything that unfolds with your blueprints.
Thank you. Well, it's
Yeah.
happening. I mean, most specifically, ayahuasca was like, you have to follow this path and we'll support
Yeah.
you. And I was primarily making most of my income as a massage therapist and energy
Awesome.
healer. And now that really took, as soon as I got back from my first trip to the Amazon, my income got like sliced in half in that arena, and like doubled in the arena of coaching and plant medicine work. And so it's been unfolding.
Yeah.
And actually, by the time your episode comes out, we will, the Sacred Integration Tribe is live now. So helping people integrate those experiences. And sounds like you have exactly the kind of background of someone I'd like to bring on board to guest host 1 week or 1 month, but it's like one episode helping people integrate that we can.
Very generous. Thank you.
I'd love to discuss more.
Yeah, let's do it. That would be awesome. Yeah. And
what inspired you to get into the therapy industry? Like before, I'm presuming all of the plant medicines and ayahuasca, you wanted to be a therapist.
Yeah. I mean, it was a really interesting path. It's like when I went to the U of A, I went to the U of A for my undergrad. I mean, I definitely had different plans. Like I didn't go there as an 18-year-old and being like, yeah, I want to be a therapist. You know, I struggled a lot actually, like choosing my major. I went from wanting to be a dance major to photography to nutrition. And then I finally landed on psychology. And I think
it's quite the varied
I know,
degrees,
right?
though.
Yeah, it was definitely a struggle between like the programming of like, how am I going to make money in the world? You know, like all these things and like, where's my heart at? And, you know, all the normal things that like someone in the Western paradigm is being institutionalized through college is like questioning, right? So, but like one thing I knew was that I had like a deep love for humanity, and I was so interested in like social psychology and just like, you know, the mind and the body. But I didn't really know what I was going to do with that, you know? So after I graduated in 2009, I went to go work for a community mental health center here in Tucson, Arizona. And I worked for them for like almost 11 years. So that took me, you know, so just being in that environment and learning so much about helping other people eventually, once again, I went through like what am I going to do? And like, you know, just a soul searching kind of thing. Yeah, someone told me about social work and I was like, okay, that's cool. Like it was like, you could do a lot of things with it. So I'm like the type of person, like, I don't like to be kind of pigeonholed and like, I only have one choice. Like I can go into policy with that. I can go into legislation. I can go into grassroots organization. And the last thing I thought I was going to do with it is become a therapist, to be super honest. Like, totally, like all throughout my master's program, I focused on like grassroots programs in underserved communities, you know? And but once I did the EMDR training, which was free and offered by my work, that was like the game changer, because after that training, like I'm bawling my eyes out and I'm like, oh my God, like number one, this works so well. Number two, I need to go get a therapist, you know? So, so it was like this, I don't know how to explain it other than like maybe in shamanic terms. It was like this random initiation that I never expected that brought me into such a deeper quality of life. And as I healed, you know, with my own childhood trauma, and I was able to take people through that's really what made me fall in love with the work of childhood trauma, you know, other things, addiction, anxiety, you know, stuff like that. Because I actually had tools to help myself, and then I could give those tools to other people to empower them to change their life in ways like just never imaginable. So Yeah, and then when the ayahuasca happened, it was just kind of like I guess the cherry on top. I don't know how, how else to explain it, but yeah, so um it wasn't like this, you know, I'm going to be a therapist. It just kind of I fell into it, and then I just ended up falling in love with it.
I love that. I think that there's something so powerful about when we've done the work ourselves and we've experienced the
Sure,
magic of
sure.
this any profound healing
Yeah.
modality, that we get so passionate about sharing it.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
yeah, for myself, I used to be a professional athlete.
Yeah.
Then I was like an actress and stunt woman and TV
Yeah, yeah.
producer. And now I'm an energy healer and psychedelic facilitator.
Yeah,
And it's this interesting paradigm of what worked for me and what worked for you. Obviously, we become so passionate
totally.
about sharing. Like there's no going back.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I wake up every day just so grateful and excited that this is what I get to do every day.
Yeah.
And you
I
as
love
well.
that.
And so, how do you work with ayahuasca now? So, you had these initial like 5 to 10
Sure.
ceremonies that were life
Yeah.
changing. What did you do? Like hundreds more? Have you done it 20
Yeah,
more
yeah.
times? How did you navigate to now where you coach people
Totally.
around ayahuasca and
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, so each year, you know, like the curiosity continued to peak, participating more in it because just the results I was getting from it, you know. Um and so I'm just trying to like how summarize this. Yeah, so I started
you can make it
Okay,
long?
cool, cool, cool. Thank you. Um I started sitting with like cuz I was only doing one-on-one in the beginning, which was really good for me.
Mm,
Like yeah,
cool.
totally. Yeah, like and it's something I share, you know, my experience, I share that a lot with other people because like a group setting for me with the nervous system I had at the time really dysregulated, um would have not done well in a group initially. Not only because this is like my
Mm,
first. I mean, ayahuasca was my first, other than some marijuana, probably back in the day, like once or twice, was my first
yeah.
anything, you know. So, um,
Ooh.
yeah. So having it on the one-on-one experience and having that therapeutic countertransference that's happening between the facilitator and myself, so like this person's becoming my mom. All the unhealed wounds are being
Mm,
showing up through her presence, and because I trusted her so much, I could go there. I didn't hold it in. I was just like,
mhm.
"Ah," just like let it all out, you know. Um,
Yeah.
so so I continued to sit, and I sat in several different groups and participated pretty heavily. You know, 2018 and 2019, I was probably in a ceremony with a group like once a month, if not more. Like it's just, I don't do it that much like now, but in the beginning, I was really moving from this participant to like I want to do this. Like I want to be able to facilitate. So um and then in 2019 I started working with a mentor, and you know in 2019 I really like I kind of had to have this like come to Jesus talk with myself because like I knew if I really was going to do this, if I was going to like commit to this path, like I would be married to it. Like it's cuz it's serious and
Mm,
there's so many things you have to do, and um yeah, so I was like having cold feet. I was like, I don't, do I really want to do this? Like, this is a lot of responsibility. You're going to hold a lot of space for people. Like,
mm.
you know, so anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
So in 2020, the height of pandemic, like before, any of us knew what was going on, I sat in a ceremony with a group, and then, the day after I know this story is kind of choppy. I don't even know if I answer your question, but just like bear with me. So I got this download. I was coming out of the ceremony, and then like ayahuasca like was coming through, and like I mean, I just like it was talking to me so clearly. It was kind of it was like kind of scary because it was so potent. And I was totally out of the medicine. So I'm like, what is going on here? So I had some like medicine that a mentor gave me. And it was just at my house. And it was just like so clear, like, hey, you're going to go and do a solo ceremony, like by yourself. And I was like, that sounds crazy. And like, that doesn't sound smart at all. But it was just such a strong intuition. Like, she told me like even down to what I was going to wear. So I just listened to what I was going to wear. She told me how to set up the room. She told me everything. So I was like, okay. And, so I ended up having like, I mean, I can't even put it into words, like the most intimate experience with myself and also with the medicine. And I was so scared, but like, after I took it and like turned on the music, and I got Manish Damore playing Darpan, like all my teachers, right? Like, all it's just like, so I'm deep in it, and I wake up and I almost forget like what I did, but I woke up to like this graduation ceremony. Like all my spirit guides were there, and they were like, you did it, you listened to us. Like it was the trippiest thing, like, because it was all so connected. And I was like, anyway, so from there I just bawled my eyes out. And anyway, long story. So after that, I was like, okay, I'm married to this. I'm doing it, And then so I got a tattoo signifying that it's like this is it. And then I went to the jungles of Peru to the Ayahuasca Foundation initiation course in 2021. Ooh. Yeah, it's a 2-month program where you drink ayahuasca 3 nights a week for 8 weeks, and you do 2 different dietas. Yeah, this is a lot happened there, basically. Okay. Yeah.
Sure.
So this is like what's happening, right? And so I did so much to get into this program. I quit my job. I saved up an amount of money I had never seen in my bank account. I had to change so many things to commit to like really start getting serious about this. So one of the unexpected things that happened to me while I was there, it was kind of unfortunate, but it's definitely, I've healed a lot from it, and it's definitely informed my philosophy and like how I coach and how I work with people is that I ended up having a traumatizing experience while I was there in the first week of the program. And yeah, I'm totally EMDR. I EMDR'd it out. We're all good. Like it's all healed now, which is incredible. But it really left a mark on my relationship with ayahuasca because like, right, I look at everything I did. I committed to it. I'm married to it. Like I'm in it. Like I'm here. And then this thing happened. So I felt totally betrayed. I was like, what? No way. This cannot be happening. So
can I ask, was this like involving a person or was this a physical trauma, like accidental trauma?
Yeah.
Or?
So it was essentially like a combination of like being too high in the jungle and too much medicine, essentially, and not getting the assistance that I needed. And I don't blame anyone, by the way. It's not about that. It's just my story and like what happened. And in the jungle, they hand you a couple medicine and you decide how much you drink, and so I just, even with all my experience, so that's why I'm big on bring your measuring cups, bring your measuring cups to the jungle, you know? So anyway, so all that experience, you know, and like that all has informed the way I coach now with preparation and integration and through a
Mm.
trauma-informed lens to make sure someone's regulated in their nervous system. Um, they know how to resource themselves throughout the experience. They know how to regulate. They know what they're getting involved in, because this is like serious business, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yep.
and I don't even, I think I kind of like, I'm not even sure what your original question was now, but like, yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not
yeah.
sure either, but your story's so fascinating. I'm
Yeah,
like, don't
yeah.
stop.
So I think it was like, in terms of like, you know, what, you know, your relationship with it and working with it and how it informs people now. So, um, you know, all my experiences as a therapist and also my experiences with ayahuasca, like helping people prepare and integrate with like a specific model. So it's grounded in
Mm.
cultivating a mindfulness practice, you know, so we can be aware and present, a bunch of polyvagal, you know, nervous system, knowing where you're at, you know, knowing how to navigate your own nervous system, breath work,
Mm-hmm.
and the EMDR, and also the inner child and reparenting work and parts work. It's a big model. Um,
It's very
yeah,
big.
so because there's a lot of shifts and changes that are happening, because I specifically help people prepare and integrate with childhood trauma. So there's a lot to consider.
Mm.
To there's a lot of like safety things we want to take into consideration. Um
Mm-hmm.
so just really helping people at this point in that arena, um, in terms of facilitation, like, you know, that's like, it's going to happen one day. I don't know when it is. And I'm like literally in no rush. It's never been that way for me. I know the right time, whenever it's ready, it will come together, if that makes sense.
Mm. Absolutely. And if it's anything that interests you, Hamilton has the Blue Morpho Academy launching now with
Yes.
the facilitator training and the master. I'll be in the working towards my master
Yeah, yeah,
facilitator
yeah.
with
Yes,
him. So that'll be,
yeah, we'll definitely have to talk more about that. I would love that.
yeah. Wow. So what a path. And I find it so interesting that you actually had trauma in the
Mhm.
medicine, that then really drives home for you about being trauma informed and guiding from a trauma informed place.
Totally.
Because I think that's something that's often overlooked in the medicine, is that we blast these people wide open. And
Yeah,
in traditional contexts, like in the Amazon, they don't deal with trauma in the same way we do. They don't even always have a word for it.
totally.
It's like a community that helps deal with it and helps heal the person. But in our Western contexts, we're so self
Yes,
focused and opening that awareness. There's not always someone there to help with that
totally.
when in the moment. There's the facilitators and they help
Mhm.
energetically and things, but having that ability to integrate even in ceremony afterwards, like when you're on the retreat,
Totally.
is so powerful. So powerful. And so to open those traumas, but to then be able to navigate them in a safe way that doesn't just leave you trauma exposed.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you
Yeah.
pointed out the cultural differences, you know, because it's really important, as you know, what I've learned, it's really important to realize like there are a lot of differences, and like
Mm.
when you are a Westerner engaging in this approach, we need Western tools. Like, we're not in the jungle. We didn't grow up with it. We didn't grow up with all these connected to nature, connected to community. It's just, and we definitely didn't grow up with an ancient practice that we're surrounded by, you know. So I think it's a
Mhm.
definitely an important conversation, you know, because kind of like, you know, with the West, like we're integrating something that is foreign to us, but we're learning more about it. And there's a lot of challenges there as we all kind of learn more about alternative healing and awaken our consciousness. And so I definitely think that's a part of just like being grounded, and understanding education, being trauma informed, just kind of realizing like, yeah, these are ancient practices, and we also need to um, give Westerners a way to approach it in a way that's gonna like work for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love that you brought up being focused a bit on meditation and regulating your own nervous system even before going into ceremony,
100%.
because I think that's something a lot of people lack as well, as having that practice already in place so that you can sit with yourself in the medicine
Totally.
space and you're comfortable a bit more in different sensations and things that may arise. Also, just that breath regulation.
Yes.
I'm consistently surprised how many people I say, tell you're going to feel nauseous. It's energy that needs to be
Yeah,
moved in the
yeah,
body, and you can also move it with the
yeah,
breath. And then I hear from them the next day how that focusing on the breath really changed their entire experience.
yeah, absolutely.
And it's just like nervous system regulation kind of 101, but a lot of people don't get that download before they go.
Yeah, it's really important. Like I would consider ayahuasca like it's like an advanced practice. It requires a lot of strength, and because you can be thrown into different visions and emotions and purges and releases and like so many different things. So yeah, I think definitely just like being able to have that observer mindset as much as possible, as much as ayahuasca will let you. But yeah,
Mm.
definitely being able to come back to the breath throughout the entire experience. Um, totally. I think is absolutely, absolutely needed. Yeah.
And so you went to do this ayahuasca training,
Yeah.
and you came back to the States, and now you're still a social worker, or do you specifically just do
Yeah,
coaching?
so mainly I do the ayahuasca preparation and integration coaching. My coaching practice is
Cool.
um, pretty much all virtual, so I hold like several
Hmm.
different programs. I have a preparation program, I have an integration program, and then I have like a 3-month intensive for ayahuasca preparation integration. So just depending on like, people's time comforts and where
Mm.
they want to come in and where they're at and, that sort of thing. Um, so I do still have like a therapy practice as well. And even in that therapy practice, talking to people who are interested in psychedelics or plant medicines, but we're looking at it through the lens of, okay, I want to address like the grief with my family and that sort of thing. Um, which is like, the only difference between therapy and coaching is like therapy, we're diagnosing people and we're creating treatment plans, and in the coaching world, we don't do any of that. Essentially, we're creating goals with people and that sort of thing. So
Mm.
so yeah, it's been an interesting transition. It definitely took I had to work through a lot of basically social programming to get really comfortable like with where I'm at with everything, especially being so um I don't know, like I don't know if you can relate to this, but when you're trained in a certain way, it's like you might feel fearful to step out of it. And so I guess at some point I learned, well, like if you don't offer this, like people are going to be doing it anyway. So it's like it's better that someone or people like you are out there offering the communities where they can appropriately prepare or come back home after these experiences, because that's like one of the hardest
Mm.
parts is integration. It's challenging, it's uncomfortable sometimes, and it can get lonely if you're. It by yourself.
Mm.
Um, so I think we're seeing that more and more and more integration communities, like how important it is to connect and talk about it and um, take away the stigma of utilizing plant medicines and psychedelics to heal and, all these different things.
Absolutely. One of my arguments against the stigma
Mm-hmm.
of using a substance to facilitate these changes is like, have you never taken vitamin C in your life to like boost your
Oh,
immune
yeah.
system? Have you never had a drink of alcohol to relax a little bit? Have you never taken magnesium,
Yeah.
or do you not take vitamin B12 because you know it's going to boost? Like, people are taking and ingesting
Right.
substances all the time to
100%.
do something in their body. And so psychedelics and plant medicines are the exact same thing. They're taking a substance to allow your body to do something in a different, in a pre sort of
Yeah,
expected
yeah.
way, like in a healing capacity, in a mind expansion way that's going to allow you the therapeutic space that you need to affect that
Yeah.
change. And so I
It's a
think
great
anyone
analogy.
who's ever taken anything, to argue against taking it is like, tell me you've never
Right,
taken
right.
anything. Tell me you've never taken ibuprofen for
Totally.
a headache. Like, really?
100%.
So,
Yeah, that's a great analogy that I feel like a lot of people can relate to and kind of hope loosen that grip on that stigma, you know?
hmm what do you think has been one of your biggest lessons walking this path?
Hmm. There's been a lot, so I'm like, wow. Um,
Sure.
yeah, I mean, I think like the biggest thing I've learned is like having contact with who I truly am and continuing to integrate that like each and every day, you know, because it's not like I don't
Mm.
have default patterns that don't come up and like, you know, and with the tools I utilize and I teach, it makes it opportunistic rather than a struggle, if that makes sense. It's like, okay, I know how to work with this part of me that's coming up right now. Um, but I think that's like that's been one of the biggest things is like this truth of myself being revealed and having the courage every day to show up in that, you know? Um,
Mm.
yeah, I mean, being a human on this path is like very complex, as you know, and there's a lot of interesting challenges that come up. Um, so yeah, I think that's been one of them. Um, and like, you know, the programs I offer and stepping into that, like that's a huge part of my integration, right? It's like taking
hmm
what I've learned about these experiences and also like, you know, that call to soulpreneurship. And I think through that process, I've had to learn that like how do I say it? Like yeah, I guess I'm struggling for words. Like being messy and experimenting and things not
Mm.
working out and like being patient. Like it's really interesting. I'm sure you've experienced this, like taking those downloads and then like somehow putting them into this like human context of like helping other people. And it's like sometimes it feels like putting a square in a circle. It's like, what's going on here? It's like two different worlds.
Mm.
Um, so it's like a lot of yeah, just being messy and like being okay with it and being patient and like knowing it's all a part of the process. Um, so that's two. Hmm.
I love that term messy, though.
Yeah.
It's like so spot on. Even for integration, like integration can just be fucking messy.
Yeah.
My last retreat was so
Yeah.
hard. My last retreat wasn't what I expected it to be, and so I was really upset about
Mm.
it. And then my ego the last day was like dissolving, and I'm supposed to be there helping people
Yeah. Yeah.
integrate during the day, and there I am falling apart having people check on
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And I was like, shit, but just
Totally.
total ego dissolution that
Totally.
day. And then the lessons came that night of what was happening, what was going on. And
Yeah.
it's like, I was like, great, didn't really want to read that chapter in the book, but I guess you have to read them all to do this work. And
Absolutely.
I'm still feeling the powerful lessons from that about the big lesson for me was gluttony.
Mm,
And I was taking huge amounts of the medicine
sure.
because Hamilton had gotten me to this DMT
Yeah.
space. And I was like, you're the gatekeeper of getting me there. And so let's do that every night. And then most nights I was denied access.
Totally.
And not for having taken him giving me medicine to take back to my room to take solo as my third cup that night. It was, and he was the one I was like, Hamilton, what's going on with me? And he's like, gluttony.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah, totally.
Like, talk about a banger of a word.
What an authentic share. Gosh, that was really refreshing. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. And I think that I think you reflected like the one of the words that I was trying to find, which is like I guess the best way to summarize it would be humility for the times that we do uncover more things we're uncomfortable with, and it's like, okay, I can sit with this too, and and having the skills and the tools to sit with some of this stuff, it's not fun, and it's interesting. Yeah. Like it's funny because it's like, if you've ever been in, for those who are listening, like being in an ayahuasca ceremony room is like, it's not pleasant, like there's a lot of noises and purges and emotional releases. And so that's messy. Right. And then so definitely like the integration is messy too. Yeah. That would only make sense.
Like
I think.
Whole last day. I couldn't even stop the tears. Like I remember laying in the hammock in my room and just being like, I got to pull this together at some point, and I can't get water to stop coming out of my face. Like, what is going on? Just full breakthrough and dissolution. So that when I showed up for ceremony that night, I was so humbled to my knees that I was like, I'll take whatever you want to give me. And Hamilton was like, you've been struggling. Let's give you the breakthrough formula. And he gets out the big cup and pours me the big, and I'm like vomiting in my mouth as he's pouring it, knowing that I shouldn't have more, but it's the last night. And so he got me there, and ayahuasca turned me, and we shrunk down to like the size of mitochondria. And she took me into a tree, and we got to look at all of the different little parts of life that are tiny. And she was like, look at how slow they move.
Yeah.
Like, look at evolution. Look at how fast you've been wanting to go. And let's slow down. And I was like, yeah, you are the goddess. Yeah.
Yeah, I love.
And then I got to go to the super depths of DMT land like afterwards. It was crazy. She was like, and here's enough to keep you going.
Yeah, totally. That's awesome. Yeah, I just love the way she teaches, It's like, it's so unique to each individual. It's amazing. Like, yeah, it's like a perfect teacher just created for you or for me or for the next person. It's wild. It's so wild.
How do you compare doing, what did you say you did? 3 nights of ayahuasca a week while you were gone for 2 months? In like doing that much. So like in June, I'll probably over 3 weeks do 10 sittings while I'm there in Peru. And so like the most I've done is 4, obviously in a week, or 5 in a week. How does that compare as it gets much larger?
Yeah. I mean, I think the factors of set and setting, like obviously play a huge role, in any experience. I think in my particular experience, while I was there, I ended up like holding way back because of what happened the first week I was there. So it was totally different, like, yeah, it was just totally different. Like it was, but it's like, it's really interesting, the contrast, doing it that much. I wasn't doing as much as I would usually do after that first Friday, because I was like, I don't want that to happen again, basically. So I backed way off, but I still went to ceremony and sat in the room, and I was just with the energy. But it's,
So
yeah,
powerful too.
totally. Yeah. So just being with the Icaros every night, being with nature, and the people you meet in this program, like your family for life, like there's no getting out of it. Like, it's like,
Yeah.
I can't even describe that process. So, um, so I would say very different, very, very different. And the dietas, that you do are really intense, and it was just a completely different experience, because my set, I was totally removed from my environment, where for the longest time I'd been used to doing ayahuasca in like the comfort of like my, sometimes my own home, to be super honest, so, which by the way, like I totally like, I'm a diva when it comes to ceremonies. Like I totally prefer that. The daytime one-on-one with like a chosen pre-vetted sitter, like all these things. My nervous system's a diva, if that makes sense. So it is a struggle for me to fly to another country, to be ripped away from the comforts of salt and sugar and like any food that you wanted. There's like all these shifts that are happening. So I felt like I had to be like, because I almost went home. I almost left after that. I was like, this totally messed me up, man. Like, this is not good. And so I really just had to set some boundaries for myself and be like, this isn't about pushing yourself. Just like take care of yourself. You're here. And, that's really where I developed the program for how I coach now, is because I did go into deep meditation. I went into deep breath work. I went into how fearful and scared my inner child was, and honestly, how angry I was about what happened. And that's where I was like, I got so many downloads about like the integration is so important. So that's like, one of the things that I feel like that's partially why that happened, although I don't feel like it needed to happen that way, but we're still integrating that part. But the last ceremony I had there, was incredible. Like, so it was like almost like a phoenix rising from the ashes situation. But anyway, so I guess it's like comparing oranges to apples, at least in my mind, because of what happened. So maybe I'll have a different experience when I go to the jungle again.
Sure. And you've mentioned several times now you've done a few dietas. What plants have you dieted? And so for everyone who doesn't know, a dieta is the ingesting of a plant so that it actually takes root in your body and shares its knowledge with you. It's called like a shamanic dieta. What have you done?
Yeah, so in the program where I went, in the Shipibo lineage that we worked with or worked under, Noya Rao is like very, it's like above ayahuasca. It's like the plant of all plants in this tribe that I went to go sit with. So we all dieted Noya Rao the first month. And then the second month we could choose between Marusa, Chiricsanongo, doing Noya Rao again, Bobinsana, and I think something else. I can't remember, but I chose Bobinsana. It was like with both of the dietas, it's like, I'm going on a first date with these guys. Like, it's like a first experience. So, I really just tried to let myself land and sink into it as much as possible, as I'm taking in this totally different experience. Like, I don't know anything about this. I've only read about it. I had read about dietas at that point. And, so I was processing a lot, after that first week. There was a lot of emotions that were happening. And, there was a couple people in the program that I'm so glad they were there, because I leaned on them hard. Like, without them, I probably wouldn't have survived. It was a social diet setting, if that makes sense. Like, sometimes diets are done in complete isolation. I would say that's probably for someone who's more advanced. But, we could talk and process together and like what we were going through. So that was really helpful. But in terms of like strengthening my relationship with those plants that I never knew was even possible, when I got back home, I think that's when I realized the power of the dietas. Because like while I was there, like I was like in Traumaville. But when I got back home and I was co-facilitating, in the group that I co-facilitate with, when I would sing the Icaros, that's when I realized, like, because instead of getting in my head or, all the things that come with like singing Icaros in a group of people, instead of getting into my self-doubt, instead of getting into my fear, I would just connect to my diets. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's what they've been talking about. This is what's happening. So I would just, like, I can't explain it. I would just sing right up to them. And then like all that ego stuff would fall to the side. And I think it was really in the integration of the dietas that I fully understood like what was going on, if that makes sense.
Cool. What an exciting experience.
Yeah.
And you said you're looking forward to going to do a dieta in April.
In June.
What do you intend to dieta then?
Yeah, in June. So I'm not too sure. I know it's some sort of tree. I was talking to Hamilton about it. So I'm not too sure like exactly what plant I'm dieting, but I know it's a tree, and maybe that will be podcast number 2. I can come back and tell you what it was about.
Yeah. I would love that.
Yeah, it's a shorter one, so it'll be like about a week. So definitely interested to see like what happens in a shorter container.
Yeah, because he said you really only needed to dieta a plant for what, 8 days? And you come out of it on the morning of the 8th day. And sounds good to me. I'm thinking about doing a dieta here at home in April.
Yeah. What are you thinking about dieting?
Rose has really been calling to me, but there's obviously so many things. So I also thought I'd kind of consult with him on what he thought I should do first.
Sure.
But I've asked him before and he's like, Barrett, you're going to diet everything. And I'm like, okay, but can you get professional here with me for a second?
Totally. I've heard great things about
because we are
Rose.
Such good friends as well. Me too. I have a friend who just did it, but he did it for 3 days, which I thought was maybe not enough time.
Yeah, I just had someone tell me about it too. Like it seems to be popping up a lot. So I've heard great things. So
maybe that'll be it. Well, so we are kind of coming to the end here. How can my listeners keep up with you? Where do you like to hang out? And how can they apply to work with you?
Yeah, so I'll be sharing with you a link, beacons.ai/the multidimensional journey. And that's like kind of like, you click on that and that's how you can access my podcast, my YouTube videos, my free workshops, how to contact me, all of that. That's kind of like how I have things set up right now. I do a ton of I think I do at least 2 free workshops a month. And that's where you can kind of get to know me, understand how I approach this work. And then I share my offers and my programs, throughout the workshop. So you can get your questions answered, so you can understand. And so right now, how it's all set up, it's kind of like in a private Facebook community, so you can interact with other people who are on the path as well. But yeah, they can check out all my stuff there and connect with me that way.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. It has been such a pleasure to get to know you and share this path with you. And I hope one day we get a chance to connect in person.
Thank you so much for having me on here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and review this podcast wherever you're listening. I'm so grateful to have you on this journey with me. Until next time.